Once we have gone through all the stages of this process of emotional dissociation that you have worked on up to this point, in this section we are going to explore the best technique that exists to completely dissociate yourself from a relationship that was so toxic for you. It is the final part of this dissociation process which will allow you to avoid relapse in the feelings and emotions that could be generated by that relationship from which you have already dissociated yourself almost completely. This technique is called the DF technique. Now, what does the technique consist of? Well, that you develop the ability to invent a virtual romantic relationship in your mind. Imagine that you are dating the woman or man or men of your dreams. Hence the name of the technique, because as you remember, I suffered a very traumatic divorce and a series of disastrous relationships after that divorce. So at one point, I asked myself why I get into such traumatic and toxic relationships. Why not be with a person who meets all the requirements that I look for in a partner? I have already told you that I entered into relationships motivated by loneliness, by fear, by fulfilling what others expected of me, by emotional dependency complexes. And that caused me to wear myself out into the process of searching for a partner when I had not yet healed from all my emotional traumas. And this happened because every time I found myself alone, under certain circumstances, certain physical sensations and certain emotions were activated in me, which led me, on an unconscious level, to be with people who were not going to suit me. And that caused enormous wear and tear on my life, on my emotions, on my time. Therefore, in the end, I decided that it was better not to have any more relationships. But still, I felt that the need to be with someone romantically. Surely, this is very similar to what happens with you. You get into relationships because you don't want to be alone, and that causes your life to get worse. Because after all, a relationship is a very big investment that one makes, not only in time, but also in emotions and money. And so it was, as I asked myself if I could choose any woman to be in a romantic relationship with, who would I be with? And for some reason, the actress came to my mind. Now, I understand with complete clarity that it is impossible for me to have a romantic relationship in the real world with the actress. Deep down, I am building a fantasy that will allow me to completely dissociate from that person who causes me so much harm. And that's why every time I felt alone, abandoned, sad, or passed through some places that activated the emotions and memories associated with the person from whom I wanted to dissociate, instead of thinking about what I had experienced with my ex partner, I thought, I imagined, I created romantic moments or moments of a relationship with my new girlfriend. For these purposes, the actress. And the results were remarkable because instead of feeling bad about my toxic partner, I felt very good imagining that I was the actress's boyfriend. To be clear, for some reason that I don't understand, I really like her physically. Now, I don't know her, I don't know what her personality is like, so my actress is not the real one in the world. That always has to be very clear. So, what did I do in those days when I began to apply the technique? The sad feeling would arise, and I would immediately be transported to that world where I was in a relationship with the actress. You will notice that when you do it, the emotions you will feel will be very pleasant. And that's why the first step was for me to declare to the actress. Then I began to imagine, to fantasize about the moment when I met her. What would I say to the actress if I met her in reality? At first, I felt very intimidated. After all, she is still a very beautiful woman. But at one point, I found the exact words to relate with her. And then I invited her to go out on a date. I imagined taking her to wonderful places, having fantastic conversations with her. I even imagined going to concerts with my virtual girlfriend. I played music, and as I walked, I imagined I was at the concert with her, dancing and having a good time. Imagine what it's like to be in a relationship where you don't have a girlfriend who upsets you emotionally, who doesn't feel jealous, who doesn't control your schedule, which tells you how great you are and which only gives you moments of happiness. Well, that's the great power your imagination has. Now, I can assure you that if you apply the technique well, you will dissociate from your toxic partner in less than a week. Furthermore, the best thing about this technique is that it prepares you sentimentally and emotionally for the next relationship you are going to be in. And that's why once I realized that the technique worked, I began to apply it in my practice with my own clients. The first one applied it, he came back the following week, totally surprised with the results. And in fact, he was precisely the one who told me that thanks to what he had learned with his imaginary girlfriend, he was able to find a girlfriend in the real world with whom to have a great relationship, because he applied to his real girlfriend the same that he had applied in their virtual relationship. He invited his girlfriend to the same places he invited his fictional girlfriend. That is, he followed two steps. He prepared her emotions and feelings and built a reality even before it occurred. Deep down, he was an architect of his own life. And that modeling process was what allowed him to apply everything he learned thanks to his imagination in his real relationship that worked like a charm for him. So, as the first step of the DF technique, I want you to think about someone with whom you would like to start a romance. And it can be whoever you want. It might be a historical figure. It might be a fictional character. The possibilities are endless. It can have the characteristics you want. And on that basis, I want you to think, to imagine about how you would conquer that ideal person for you. How would you approach his or her? What would you talk to him about? What would you say to her to make her feel impressed by you? How would you stop him from getting bored of being with you? What strategy would you follow when you're trying to conquer her? That is why I indicated that this modeling process is then applied to reality. My clients follow the same steps they followed with their imaginary girlfriend or boyfriend, as the case might be. And they become very effective in the process of conquest. And I want you to activate that imagination process every time the thought associated with a memory regarding to your toxic ex-partner in the real world arises in you. And once you conquer your ideal partner, I want you to imagine all the situations in which you would like to be with that person. For example, what an ideal date with your virtual partner would be like. Where would you take her? What would she say? What would you do to make her feel special? And on that basis, the next step will be for you to imagine yourself being the most special person for your imaginary partner. I used to imagine the actress just telling me how wonderful I was, how great a man I was to her, with which, of course, my ego was inflated. So instead of being suffering from my past relationship for that person who didn't love me, I was in my mind living a relationship with one of the most beautiful women in the world. In your case, if you wanted, you could have a virtual relationship even with Hercules or Venus, as the case might be. So with this, you can now begin to use this technique, and I assure you that if you applied it well, it will give you excellent results.